Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
This year marks the 60th anniversary of the campaign for nuclear disarmament, and that means it's also the anniversary of one of the world's most recognised political symbols, adopted by the CND ahead of an anti-nuclear weapons march to Aldermaston in 1958. Ellie Price has been taking a look.
For millions around the world, it's simply the peace sign, but its origins are homegrown. Designed by a British artist called Gerald Holtham ahead of a march he himself was going on. And the design is surprisingly straightforward. It's a maritime signal or semaphore for N and D. Nuclear disarmament. Gerald Holtham first showed this sketch of the image to a few members of the organising committee of that protest march to Aldermaston in February 1958. Michael Randall was one of 4 people in the room.
Well, I was a little bit unsure. I didn't immediately say, oh yeah, that's great, we must do that. But some of these other pictures helped to sort of enthuse, I think, all of us. He showed a big streamer banner that would stretch right across the road with the symbol on, and it would be spectacular. So he had thought about what the march would look like with this symbol on. And really, he sold it to us on that basis.
The march took place over Easter just a few weeks later. So you were on this march?
Yes.
Gerald Holtham's daughter Anna was 15 at the time. She'd helped make some of the placards, albeit begrudgingly.
I think I was really annoyed with their plans to go to Aldermaston because I probably had some boyfriend that I wanted to see. I wasn't too sure. It's a very, very cold day, I believe. And going to Aldermaston on a long walk with not the right clothes was not something I looked forward to. He loved the idea of the lollipop placard because they were easy to hold, and he was thrilled with that circle. And we all were in the workshop working away, printing them and sticking them on with copy decks. Sometimes getting splinters in our hands because the wood wasn't very nice wood.
The march was a success, so much so that it was repeated for several years. And there at the beginning was an American peace and civil rights campaigner called Bayard Rustin, who was so impressed with the protest and the symbol that he took it to the US and helped organise the 1963 March on Washington. From then, the CND symbol would become known more broadly as the peace sign. So it was just as well that Gerald Holtham hadn't copyrighted it.
I think that's what's made it successful, because nobody, people could reproduce it in whatever format seemed right to them, in whatever context, and to take on whatever meaning they wanted it to take on.
It's as modern today as it was in the 1960s and the 50s.
And 6 decades on, the CND don't mind sharing their logo either.
I think having this symbol, which embraces all these different aspects of the peace movement, has great resonance with young people as well as across the generations. I think that's very, very powerful. I think it's helped the cause of peace, to be as significant as it is in Britain today.
And we're joined now by the design guru Stephen Bailey. Why is it such a great design?
Well, there are all various tests for what makes good design, and I think endurance is one of them. It's lasted, as we know, 60 years. Another thing is adaptability. It works on a T-shirt, it works on a surfer dude's camper van, it works on banners, and it's a logo, it's a little graphic device which has created a whole brand, a whole sense of awareness. I actually think, though, it was a terrific little film, but I suspect that's a bit of retrospective rationalisation about the semaphore.
Do you think so?
I don't know. No one knows.
No.
But I suspect it is. I think he was just. I suspect what the design was doing was playing around with the Christian cross, and it went, and it went one way. But great logos often always happen by accident.
But do you think? I mean, it really was an accident. There wasn't some great motivation behind it.
It was a creative accident.
Yes.
Just like, say, Coca-Cola happened to be the signature of the company's bookkeeper.
Yeah.
The famous FedEx logo. The graphic designer, was mucking around with the typefaces, put the E and the X together, and suddenly an arrow appeared. He didn't intend that. And I think that's what's happened here. But the other thing about it is that it's that endurance and adaptability. You know, it was well after the Charlie Hebdo atrocity in Paris, it was quickly adopted, became an Eiffel Tower. And that's another sign of excellence in design, something which sort of stays the same but can also be
And it
changed.
transcends, as you say, every sort of country, every movement in that sense.
Well, it's immediately, you know, I mean, I love the disciplines involved in trying to design just a little graphic thing, a graphic précis, a visual pun, which lasts and endures and carries meaning.
Right. I mean, I don't suppose the designer at the time thought it would be so successful from a brand and sort of logo point of view.
Well, absolutely, certainly. Coca-Cola's bookkeeper, when he was squiggling on the accounts, didn't think that was going to become one of the most recognisable, you know, logos in the world.
And actually, it's a symbol that has gone beyond its original meaning because it is now broadly seen as a symbol for peace.
Way beyond it. I mean, it was originally very much about the CND campaign. The other thing is that even people like me could draw it. I mean, anybody could draw it.
I mean, do you think that's the thing, the simplicity of it in terms of its reproduction, as you say, at various levels of placards on T-shirts? And
well, there's a basic rule in all communications, both visual communication and written communication. Verbal communication, that's, I think, simplify, then exaggerate. And that's what's happened here. But this sort of simplicity is actually very, very hard won. It's not a silly doodle. It's actually, it might have been created by unpredictable processes, but this guy thought long and hard and worked and worked and worked on it, and that's why you know, it's the 10,000 hours thing. I don't know how many hours he spent on it, but it was, you know, it's the end of a very thoughtful process.
Right. Can you think of any other symbols that have been? I mean, so you mentioned some of the other logos, but I'm trying to think of political symbols that have been as sort of prominent and endured in the same way.
Well, I don't know what interests me about the CND logo, and it's important to make a distinction here, I think, between a logo and a brand. I mean, the logo is a little graphic device, and if it works well, it creates, you know, larger, more diffuse brand values. And what fascinates me further is the way brands operate like religions do, and that applies here, but it applies to any other great brand like, you know, Apple, for instance. I mean, Steve Jobs' appearances in San Francisco was like the second coming, and designed to be so. And, you know, I said all great brands are modelled on religion. You have a congregation, you have an icon, literally an icon, and you have a belief system.
Right.
And that's what this created.
It hasn't been copyrighted.
No.
Maybe that might have helped. I mean, it's interesting, your points about religion, because I think there have been times when it might have been misrepresented if it was seen as either Christian or anti-Christian.
Yes.
I mean, do you think it ever gave a sense of being anti-religious in any way?
Well, no, I don't think it does. I think it gives a sense of being religious, almost, without not specifically. But there's another talk about his origin. There was some discussion some years ago. Somebody spotted on a Romano-Celtic gravestone somewhere in Brittany or something like that a glyph, you know, a stone carving, which was almost identical to this. And that probably had some sort of esoteric religious significance. So I think what's clever about this, you're trying to deconstruct it, is that it's non-specific, you know, religiously, but it does have the sort of power and suggestiveness of a religious symbol, which is good.
Yeah, and it's endured this discussion too. Thank you very much, Stephen Bailey, for
It's a
coming
pleasure.
in.
Thank you.
I've been getting away with it all my